Hi, listeners. Just before we begin, a quick note. We recorded this episode before shelter in place and COVID-19 was all up in our realities. In fact, we recorded this back when we were still doing Democratic debates for the nomination for president. As of right now, today, Bernie Sanders actually suspended his campaign for the presidency. That's how long we've been out of the game. So, with that in mind, it's not that we're ignoring reality because we don't talk about COVID-19 on the show. It's that while we recorded it, it wasn't the reality we were living in. All right, now on to the show. You're listening to Occupolitics, a MuggleNet.com podcast about politics in the wizarding world of Harry Potter. I'm Adri, one of your hosts and a recovering English major. Today, I'm joined by our producer turned co-host, Helene Karp, and we are tackling the politics of legacy on Chapter 6, The Noble and Most Ancient House of Black, of Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix by J.K. Rowling.
Hi, I'm Helene. If you have listened to any of our Patreon exclusive episodes of The Girl Who Lived, that's me. I'm that other voice, that one that's not Adri. And I am really excited to be here. I am so excited.
Helene, tell us more about yourself to the listeners who are not patrons, but who should be.
Well, I did co-host one episode at the end of Goblet of Fire of regular Accupolitics, so you might remember me from there. But in case you don't, I am a Hufflepuff, and my Ilvermorny house is Pukwudgie, and my Patronus is a dolphin, and my wand is I think it's like 10.5-inch maple with a unicorn hair core, slightly flexible, whatever that means. Yeah, that's my Potter profile. Other than that, I live in Minneapolis where it's freaking cold as hell. And I sell t-shirts for a living. So that's exciting.
I think that's the coolest job description ever. But I think you're selling yourself short, but okay.
Well, it's like I try to explain what I do and people just they're like, oh, cool. Like, I mean, it's not a very exciting job description. I'm a sales manager for a custom apparel company, if that helps. So screen printing, digital printing, embroidery. I can make you a shirt. That's basically it.
Yeah. Maybe the Accio shirts at some point when we get big enough will be.
Oh, totally.
This is like nepotism at its finest.
Oh, no, yeah. Like today I just placed a free order for my sister for a t-shirt that she just sent me a design. She's like, can I get this on a t-shirt? And I just place a free order for her. So yeah, I can hook you up.
We can all get hooked up by Helene. This is why we have her.
I will say that my more fun job, the one that I actually don't get paid for, is I am the marketing manager for MuggleNet.com. So that is a little bit more exciting, and I love it. So there's that.
Man, you just all your jobs you have manager in the title of. So
yeah,
that's what's impressive to me. You are a boss. You're smashing the patriarchy, one career woman at a time.
Hell yeah. Yeah, just call me boss.
I'm gonna make you earrings that say boss. Just you wait. Oh, you can't. You don't have pierced ears.
I don't have pierced ears.
I'll make you a necklace. I'll make you a necklace that says boss.
Okay, perfect. Yes. I mean, I maybe clip-on earrings would work.
I've heard from my friends who've had to use clip-on earrings that they hurt.
Yeah, they do pinch your nerves in your earlobes. I think your ears go numb after a while, but they're not the most comfortable.
So kind of like wearing heels. Once you stop feeling your feet, they don't hurt anymore.
Yeah, they're heels for your earlobes.
Oh, clip-on earrings, heels for your earlobes. You heard it here first.
Yes.
We're on fire tonight. Okay. We still want to hear from you so we can make a bonus episode. Please let us know how Harry Potter has affected the way you view the world, or, your politics, which is also the way you view the world. You can leave us a voicemail at 915-996-1699. Email us, a MP3 of your voice, a recording, I don't know, whatever you want to do, or, type
Voice
at
memos.
info@accupolitics. Yeah. info@accupolitics.com. You could use the contact us feature on our website, and that also gets to us. And you can find us as at Accupolitics on all the social channels, like all the old people say, on the twitter.com, on the facebook.com, and on the instagram.com.
The only method that I do not recommend is just screaming really loud into the void, because we're not going to hear that. Sorry.
Unless you're a guest on our show and we're having our special Screaming into the Void episodes.
Yes. Come back for our recurring segment, Screaming into the Void, when things happen and we have to complain about them.
You know what? I think that should be a new segment on this show.
I love it. Our first and only episode so far was very great, so I'm good with that.
So we could make it just like a segment. Adri and Helene scream into the void about something.
Tune in to find out what will be next.
Well, I think I just love to complain anyway, so this goes perfectly with my natural inclinations.
Yeah, it doesn't even matter if no one listens to it. It's cathartic.
Exactly. I'm just like, I just need to take a load off here. Let me complain about all the things, but I'm not like, let me talk to your manager complain. It's more about life is unfair, guys.
Let me talk to your therapist.
Let me talk to your therapist. Oh my God, I love that. Today, as we talk about politics of legacy, we're talking about Chapter 6 of Order of the Phoenix. Helene, what happens in this chapter?
Oh my gosh, so much happens in this chapter. I actually listened to this chapter instead of read it. I listened to it on Audible. No, I listened to it on Audible. That's the correct word.
I too listened to it on Audible, so we are we are Audible buddies.
Yes, and it was like a 42-minute long chapter, so I was like, "Oof, this one's beefy." I don't
Wait,
actually
do you
remember.
listen to it? Now I'm curious. I can't. I have to ask. Do you listen to it at like normal speed or like sped up?
I listen to everything at normal speed. I know I have friends who listen to things sped up or like watch YouTube videos sped up, and I just can't do it. I have to listen to it at normal speed.
I love the narrator of the series, but his voice is so slow. I have to listen to it at least 1.5.
I don't actually really like Jim Dale that much. I really prefer Stephen Fry, but we can't get those in the US. So,
because hashtag unfair.
Yeah, like I could really live without Jim Dale having Hermione pronounce Harry's name like Harry. And I also could really live without like him saying Lestrange. It like bothers me every time. I'm like, it's Lestrange. It's not Lestrange.
You know what? You're right. It's the way that Hermione says Harry's name that is bad.
No, I hate it. It's literally and like I'm pretty sure in Goblet of Fire she says his name like 10,000 times more often than she does in any other book.
You just explained to me why sometimes I just want to speed up through it too.
Yep. Anyway, so what happens in this chapter? Gosh, so many tangents, all the tangents. Anyway, so we start off with Mrs. Weasley makes Harry and all of his friends go to bed after their meeting where they kind of have their debrief about what the Order of the Phoenix is doing. Mm-hmm. And of course, as teenagers do, they kind of, instead of going to bed like Miss Weasley tells them to, they kind of all congregate and talk about what they just learned and kind of unpack what they are, everything that they just heard.
Honestly, they just have a really good hot gossip session about Voldemort.
Yeah, and I'm just really sad that my girl Ginny couldn't be there. I love her, and she would have a lot to say.
She would have a lot of great ideas.
Hell yeah. Although I will say one of my all-time favorite quotes in the entire Harry Potter series is in this chapter, and it has to do with Ginny. It's when Fred and George are talking about how size is no guarantee of power. Just look at Ginny. And I'm like, that speaks to me so much because I'm a short, tiny little person. I'm 5 feet tall. I'm not even 5'1". I'm 5 foot and like half an inch. I'm a tiny little person. I do not have any physical strength, I will tell you that. But, you know, I got all the other strengths. So I'm like,
Same.
yes, this quote speaks to me. I want to get it tattooed on my body somewhere at some point in my future. I love it. And this is the chapter where it happens. So this chapter gets a nice big check mark in my book because of that.
That is an amazing quote. Also because I too am a short person. Mm-hmm. But I am a very mighty person.
Exactly.
Anyway, the next day, Ron and Hermione are, enlist Harry as one would do with their very best friend to continue with the decontamination and cleaning up of Sirius's old house.
Yeah, so this is quite a task. Honestly, I don't ever want to step foot in Grimmauld Place, like at least before this contamination. It sounds disgusting. It sounds dirty. It sounds dangerous. And all the stuff that they do, like that thing that the wart cap powder, or I think that's what it's called, that like gets on Sirius's hand and makes his hand all crusty. Oh, that part, listening to that part in the chapter made me like gag.
Well, there's a lot about this house that makes me gag. And one of those things might be how Kreacher interacts with the gang.
Yeah, Kreacher is not my favorite. Oh, gosh.
Like, I know, like, he's an oppressed person or, creature. Man, sometimes he makes it so hard.
Yeah, no, his just blatant racist stuff that he says is just cringe-worthy for sure. So
I mean, one of the things is that he calls Hermione the M word.
Yeah, no, and that's not he does it like 8,000 times throughout the book. So it's like you get kind of desensitized to it, but at the same time, it's just every time it's just awful. But an upside to this like montage of them cleaning basically is we get to learn a little bit more about what Fred and George are doing in terms of their joke shop. So if we remember
their business venture.
Yes, exactly. And if you remember, Harry gave them all his winnings from the Triwizard Tournament so that they could start this business. And so as, a large partner in the business, as they kind of see Harry, they keep him up to date on all of the goings on and what they're working on. Even though I don't think Harry asked for that, but that's okay. It's still entertaining either way. So they, what is it? They like took, was it Doxies that they were pocketing to help make their puking pastels and their
yes.
Yeah, so they're making their puking pastels, which I think this is the first time we hear about it. And they just sound like, I just remember thinking when I was listening to this part of the chapter that they are so intelligent. Like you don't really, when you think of the Weasley twins, you don't think of how smart they are. You just think of how funny and mischievous and, like rude they can be. But you don't think of like how much raw smarts it takes to pull off what they're doing.
I think one of my favorite parts about this series when it comes to the Weasley twins is showing how some like a pair of pranksters who no one really takes very seriously can be such business savvy individuals.
Yeah, it's like smashing expectations left and right with them. It's crazy. Anyway, what's next, Adri? What happens next in the chapter?
Let's see. So we see that Sirius doesn't really like Kreacher, doesn't care. I think it's also about the fact that Sirius also, grew up in this biased environment that is used to the enslavement of house elves, and Hermione's coming to it from a fresh perspective. So that's an interesting sight. And we'd seen this with Ron before as well. So it's kind of showing like how characters can be blind to biases that they have. And then we see the tapestry that shows the Black family lineage.
Yeah, on the note of Sirius and Creature, I do think that like part of it is that Creature is just used to, bossing around. Sirius is used to bossing around house elves in general, mainly Creature, because that's like what he grew up with. But I also think that he genuinely just like dislikes who Creature, like who he is, what his personality is. Like he doesn't like Creature as a being. Like if it was another house elf, like I think like he would like Dobby. I feel like he would be fine with Dobby. I don't know. Does Sirius ever meet Dobby?
I was trying to figure that out. I was trying to remember, and I don't think I can remember that.
Yeah, I don't think he ever meets Dobby, but I feel like he wouldn't, like, I don't think he would be as horrible to Dobby as he is to Creature. I think that it's like Creature reminds him of his mother, and he reminds him of like all the crap that his family put him through and all the horrible morals and values that his family holds. So I don't think it's just the fact that he was grown up with like being horrible to house elves in general. I will say that.
Well, I'm not saying that he is horrible to house elves. It's more about when you grow up around something and you don't really examine it as much, and you can have a bias that you are blind to. I know this. I only know this because I took an inclusion and diversity workshop for work at the leadership summit that I was going to earlier last month, and one of the things that the facilitator had us do was this exercise where he gives you kind of a fable, and you have to, in order, sort the characters from like most to least of people responsible for the situation that the fable ends up in. And there's no right answer. It's just that the order of responsibility shows what biases you have.
Okay. Sounds interesting.
It's really interesting. And then when he was talking about that, the person I held the most responsible for the situation actually represented the broken system, like a political system, or like a prison industrial complex system type thing. And I mean, they're all people, so the characters represent, like, it's obviously like fable allegory. They each represent one type of thing. Like one of them represent disenfranchised individuals, like so. Mm-hmm. So when he said that, I was like, oh my God, that's true. Like I am very like anti-system. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. It's just saying that's the value that I hold because of specific instances. But everyone's order was very different. And he had us kind of, even before he discussed what it meant, had us kind of debate with each other about the order that we all chose. And everyone had a different order.
Wow. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I'll actually post if I can find the fable, because it's used in a lot of sociology classes on Twitter and our social channels once this comes out, and also on Patreon. And then I'll share on Patreon I'll share what my order was.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's an interesting exercise.
Anyway, so back to the chapter.
Yeah, so you were saying how Sirius shows Harry this tapestry of all of the lineage of the noble and most ancient House of Black.
Yes. So they start talking about who of all Sirius is related to, right?
Yeah, and Harry learns a lot that he did not know about in this chapter. And I mean, like, we all do. if you're reading this for the first time, you had no idea that all these people are related to the Blacks. It's crazy.
Well, it also shows how tiny the wizarding world is.
Oh yeah, at least purebloods.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, so they all marry each other? Is that thing? Is this like a country club set? You know, like you must be this rich to marry into the family?
Honestly, like it kind of reminds me, and I'm saying this as someone who is Jewish. It reminds me of like the Orthodox Jewish communities because like they have to marry within their community. They can't like it's like that where they cannot marry someone who isn't Jewish. At least most Orthodox Jews are like that. And so like a lot of
Sorry, I was going to make the joke, but go ahead.
No, what were you going to say?
No, I was going to make you just finish and I'll make the joke.
Okay. So it's like the community is very, very tight knit because a lot of them know each other, and a lot of them are related. I don't think like incest or anything happens. Like I'm not going to speak onto that, but it just does like this like reminds me of something that is very similar to Orthodox Jews.
Well, I mean, as someone who just found out she's 7% Jewish, I feel that's on a cellular level.
Yes. Well,
this is a majority Jewish podcast.
It is. Yes. No, like, and honestly, like, I think it's something that's associated with like people who don't know a lot about the Jewish faith in general. I feel like that's something that is associated to our faith in general by a lot of people who aren't like super educated, because as someone who's Jewish, I get the question all the time because my dad is a rabbi. So I get the question all the time if like I have to marry someone who's Jewish, or if my parents would not approve of like me marrying someone who isn't Jewish. Like I get that question all the time. And like my answer is always like, no, my parents would not care. Like they just want me to marry someone. I mean, like maybe they would be a little bit happier if the person was Jewish, but they just want to marry someone who I love. They don't care. Like my sister's marrying a Christian. Like but they don't care. And people are so surprised by that answer.
Well, I think because a lot of people who may be asking you that question, their families would not be thrilled if if a Christian married a non-Christian.
Yeah, I don't know, because I feel like the population is so just like Christian in general in the United States. Like they're not really religious Christians. They're all secular Christians, like I don't know, like Easter and Christmas Christians, basically. So like it really isn't an issue for those types of religious people, the people who say that they're Christian but like they don't go to church all the time or anything like that. It's not a big issue, but like fundamentalist evangelical Christians, it's a really big issue, and you don't really run into those types of like that population is just so much smaller that you like when you think of a Christian, you just think of like a secular Christian, and you don't really think that every single person who identifies as Christian is super like strict about marrying another Christian.
Well, I think we all have family members though who are pretty conservative in their ideas of who should marry whom. I mean, I'm speaking from my general experience. I don't think my parents expected me to marry like necessarily a Puerto Rican, but like they would be really happy if I did. Because then that's like one less thing that they have to worry about. Like, will they understand the culture, right? Would that person understand the culture? But I think they would really, really have their reservations if like I was marrying like an atheist, you know? Because even though my family is definitely secularly Catholic, someone who doesn't believe in a higher power to them is like unthinkable.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't necessarily go to church every weekend, and like I am very, spiritual in certain ways, but I don't agree with the Catholic Church a lot. And I don't agree with a lot of organized religions a lot in the way that they, practice maybe their faith or try to tell people what to do with their own bodies. So, so that's where it gets a little bit complicated. But yeah, I think that definitely my grandmother would have died if I didn't marry a Catholic. So she died when I was 7. So, I mean,
She didn't have to worry about that yet.
she doesn't have to worry about that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, so I was worried that my husband's family wanted me to like convert to their religion. And I was like, no, thank you.
Well, I mean, and there's a lot of parallels with this type of like outlook that people have on marriage and just in the Black family in general, because they talk about in this chapter, if they marry a mudblood, or if they marry a muggle, or if they marry, they don't say this, but
Someone
I'm
from a
guessing even if,
different caste, you know?
yeah, even if they married like a half blood, I'm sure like they get completely singed off of the tapestry. Like they are disowned, they are dead to the family. So I mean, that is, they
Yeah,
definitely
so
uphold
it's just
those types
funny
of
to me
beliefs.
that it's just funny to me that like, oh, marrying a muggle born, singed off the tapestry, committed genocide, still there.
Oh yeah, no, it's this family is fucked up.
But there are a lot of fucked up families out there, you know? Like there's fuck. I could go on and on about legacy, but before we get there, I don't know. Do we have anything else to say, and then we can just dive into the politic?
Um, let's see. What any other interesting points about the chapter? Um, well, Harry and Sirius kind of like have a heart to heart about where he's going to live after his hearing. It's not really like super heart to heart because it's basically just Harry asking if he can live with Sirius after his hearing if he gets expelled from Hogwarts because he really doesn't want to go back to the Dursleys. And Sirius being all evasive and like, well, you probably can't, but we'll see. Um, and so it kind of makes me wonder if Dumbledore has told him, why Harry can't live there, but
Well, it's kind of like Sirius Black is having like that non-committal like boyfriend who's like, well, I don't know, I really like you.
like if it was if it was 100% Sirius's decision, he would totally have Harry live with him. So we have
I
to like
know,
so
I know.
we know that there has to be some outside influence here. But poor Harry was like having fun and finally like forgetting about the hearing, and then all of a sudden he remembers it, and it's like, poor boy, he has to go through so much shit this book. I feel so bad for him.
But no wonder he's angry all the time.
I know. I just want to give Harry a big hug.
Oh, me too. I mean, sometimes I'm reading this book and I'm just like, same, Harry, same. I still love this angst every day.
Yeah, no, I'm like one of those weird people that I'm not a huge fan of Order of the Phoenix as a book, but it has absolutely nothing to do with Harry's angst. I feel for Harry this whole book.
Yeah, this whole book, I'm like, this is the most relatable Harry's ever been to me.
Yeah, poor boy.
Poor boy. Anyway, so today we're talking about the politics of legacy, and we had like that brief discussion about the tapestry and what it means. So I want to start out to talking about what the politics of legacy mean to us individually, to you and I, Helene. So to me, this brings to mind all the times where, I was, growing up in the Caribbean in Puerto Rico and having people who had never met me judge others or me based on who their parents or families were or were not. And like, I remember this time where not one time, many times, I went to 4 different schools. So I was a new kid 4 different times. And teachers didn't know or, were not sure about how smart I was or wasn't, or kind of, were skeptical of my abilities because they didn't know who my parents were.
Okay.
And it was like that sense of like community of, well, I taught your dad when he was in high school and he was such a good student, So of course you're going to be a good student. And that person was a little shit, but would get away with everything. Meanwhile, like I'm there in the corner being very quiet and calm and, acing the tests. And I had like a teacher come up to me and is like, are you sure you're not cheating?
Oh my God.
And I remember taking the College Board, which is the equivalent of the SATs for the Caribbean. So it's the college admissions test. And I had the highest grade in math. So, like, the highest grade in math and almost perfect score in English, and like a really high grade in Spanish, like the three things that they measure. And when the scores came to the school, those were given to the teachers so they would know what our scores were. And the math teacher went to her star pupil, whose dad was a CPA, and she had also taught math too in high school. And she was like, "I was surprised that you weren't the highest score on the test." And she looked at me and she goes, "And you were?" Like, it was like, "Excuse you."
Yeah, rude.
Rude, ma'am. And another time I entered a high school poetry contest that was just, internal. And I submitted 2 original poems. And the teachers called me aside. The Spanish teacher called me aside and she was like, "Are you sure you wrote these poems?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Are you sure? These are very mature and too good." And I said, "Yes, I did." So I won first place. And then lo and behold, I read the entry that won second place. And I was like, this seems familiar. So we used to there was this kind of like a Teen Vogue, but in Spanish, and it's called TU, like
Okay.
you.
Yeah, you.
And in the back, there's like there was always a thing where, you could submit poems and get them published, like I don't know, like a little thing. And I was like, okay. So then I opened the magazine and I went to the flip to the back, and the poem that won second prize was the same exact poem that had been published on the magazine, on this teen magazine, with like 3 words changed.
Oh my God.
But the teacher never questioned that one, but yet she questioned me several times and made it to make sure that I, with my too good poem, was, just to be sure that I wasn't cheating.
And you think that this was because they didn't know who your parents were and not because of like racism?
Oh no, because we were all Puerto Rican, girl.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
Yeah. No,
it sounds like racism, honestly.
Well, so the racism of the island is who your parents are.
Gotcha. Okay, man.
So, but isn't racism also, like, if we're thinking about this, isn't racism a type of politics of legacy in a way? Because racism is based upon the belief that there are lesser beings than others, and
it's white supremacy, basically.
Exactly, which is the reason why. So the slavery and all the medical experiments that were done on Black bodies were explained away as the Black body is in many ways superior to, like it can withstand much more pain and do much more work than the white body, but yet they are still inferior to us. That's I'm not saying us as me. I mean, that was the argument, and a very dehumanizing argument. And even the racism we see now is a carryover from that legacy. And if your parents are Black, or one of your ancestors is Black, and they follow like that 1 drop rule, right? Mm-hmm. That is definitely the politics of legacy, because you're treated as lesser than because at some point your ancestors were considered lesser than.
Oh, yeah. No, you're right. It's bad. It's bad.
So yes, racism in the Caribbean and everywhere. Legacy.
Yeah, I mean, mine, like the way that I see it personally is also, it's very similar in a lot of like base like ways that you've explained. But I see it as more like, I see legacy as kind of like a set of expectations that people have. So it's like people put these expectations on both you and your ancestors or your parents or, the people that came before you. based on like, so with me, it was both my parents. I kind of briefly mentioned this earlier. Both my parents were members of the Jewish clergy. So my dad is a rabbi, or he is retired. And my mom was a cantor, who is like the spiritual song leader. Basically, like they both retired, but they led this services every Friday night together. My dad would lead the prayers, my mom would lead the songs. So they're both members of Jewish clergy, and therefore I mean, like, we are Reformed Jews, so we aren't super like Orthodox or like conservative, and my parents are very religious, but they don't follow all those like super strict rules. So what I'm trying to say, sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought.
I'm following.
I'm not. I lost my train of thought. So one second. What was I going to say? Okay, yeah. So like the fact that they were both members of Jewish clergy, kind of like came on to me as their child, and my sister as well. That we had these expectations that, you know, our parents are these large, very respected and very religious figures in our community, and therefore like all of these expectations are put on me to be all of those things. So like I always just assumed, like, people expected me to be very religious, to be very well behaved, to be very I don't know, like a very,
So
very,
what you're saying is the eye of Sauron was on you.
yeah. I mean, I think that's a Lord of the Rings reference, and I'm not a huge Lord of the Rings fan, so I'm not really sure what the reference means, but I'm sure that you're correct.
So the idea is like that that something is always watching, like a menacing, like.
Yeah. Well, I felt a pressure to be and act a certain way because of who my parents are. But I mean, the reality is that I'm my own person. And a big staple in the Jewish faith, at least the way that I was raised in the Jewish faith, is that that it's like in adolescence, there's there's a entire journey of self discovery. We have it with our bar and bat mitzvahs, where we kind of are like becoming an adult in the community. And then when we get to confirmation, it's an entire year dedicated to study on what we think Judaism means to us, like how we interpret our religion, how we want to use it and live our life moving forward, knowing what it means to us. So like it's not like, at least the way that I was raised, it is not extremely necessary to be religious. You can grow up a Jew and you can be Jewish and love your faith and love the morals and values that your faith taught you, but not go to synagogue every week. Like it's just, at least that's how I interpreted it, and that's how I was kind of raised to believe. And that's even growing up with very, very religious parents. Like they go to services every week. Well, I mean, now that they're retired, I don't know if they do it anymore, but like growing up, from when I was a baby until I was 18 years old, when I lived in my parents' house, we would go to services, we go to synagogue every Friday night. I would go to Hebrew school on Wednesday, Sunday school on Sunday. It was like very, very much involved in the community, very much involved in my religion, but at the same time, like I was given the freedom to be as religious as I wanted to be. And now as an adult, so I just feel like with the legacy of my parents, having all of this expectation on them because they are the religious leaders, it kind of, then the legacy of their like influence and the type of people that they are pushed onto me. Mm-hmm. And not only am I judged whether or not I am the same Jew as they are, or the same, you know, I practice my faith in the same way as them. But then I feel like they're also judged about like whether or not I hold up to people's expectations.
So what you're saying there is almost like legacy works both ways, right? Like Sirius Black being kind of the rebellious son mm-hmm. was a stink, like a bad scorch mark on the legacy of the Blacks.
Yeah, and I think that's why, I mean, I think the Blacks view their legacy is so important that that's why they scorch people off their tapestry. That's why they make it so people who do not fit in their expectations uh, are dead to them. Like, I think that they want to preserve their legacy so badly that they just cut off anybody who doesn't fit in that box. And thank God that's not how it is with my family, because I am not like the picture perfect Jew. I mean, ever since I moved out to Minneapolis, lived on my own, I've never once been to services out here. I don't belong to a synagogue. I practice my religion when I'm home with my family, but I don't when I'm out here living on my own. Like, I'm not religious. I'm very like, I let the values and morals that I learned growing up lead me in my decisions in my everyday life, and it's shaped me as a person. Like, I wouldn't be who I am without it, but I don't practice and that's just like a conscious decision I've made. And so, like, if my parents were anything like the Blacks and they, disowned anybody who didn't fit into the box of like what their legacy was as far as like our religion, I would never talk to my parents again.
Well,
Which, thank God, it's not like that.
Well, they wouldn't talk to you. It's the point. Is the point?
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Yeah, no, I think that a lot of us can also relate to that, where we've had, influences, in our parents' lives that, something they have done, which carries over into what people now expect us to do because we are from them,
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that has a little bit to do with privilege. So we also inherit privilege.
As well as
Disadvantages. Yeah.
Disadvantages, exactly. Yeah. Like, it's great that I mean, I've inherited a lot of privileges from my family, but I've also, being Jewish alone also comes with disadvantages, and so does being Puerto Rican.
I'm sorry, a Puerto Rican Jew. Remember that.
7% Ashkenazi Jew. Yes.
I mean, I am a triple minority now, Helene. I don't know if you knew this.
Oh my gosh, yes. Play it up for as much as you can.
Wait until I bring my paperwork into HR.
Oh my god.
No, but no, and I feel that. And I think legacy also works in oppressive ways, like you suggested. We see oppressed minorities. They're often questioned whether they, did that really happen because they grew up poor, unless they're white. If they're white, they're self-made. If they're not white, then they have to have had some like nefarious past to make it,
Yeah.
Because who grows up in, in a poverty stricken, like undesirable part of the neighborhood, quote unquote, and still makes it? Come on.
I mean, honestly, a lot of African American role models, especially in Hollywood, are like that. I mean, they're self-made. You got Oprah, you got Whoopi Goldberg. Like, it's a very it's like a very big misconception.
Well, it's a huge misconception, but it's also, I mean, I'm not talking necessarily about Oprah. Like, I'm not talking about celebrities who have like earned the goodwill of the public. I'm talking about more specific instances of like maybe someone you didn't know, or is not a celebrity locally or otherwise. And all of a sudden, they worked really hard for what they have. And at every turn, people are questioning like, but how did that happen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
Because then we have like people who say, well, that was affirmative action. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's not how it works. Like, it's been shown that affirmative action actually benefits white women more than it does anyone else.
I gotta admit that I don't know what affirmative action is.
Oh, so, okay, sorry. Affirmative, this is kind of before your time. Sorry. I like saying that I'm an old. So
you are an old.
Yes. So affirmative action is this idea that in order to like admit someone to college or hire, like you have to give preference to certain minorities.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that it's hard to enforce. It's not, you know, no one's really enforcing it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's supposed to be battling inequalities in opportunities for minorities. And white women are one of those minorities. And what has been shown, and I think I can look for the study as well, is that the real winners of the affirmative action policies that have been in place in workplaces and other, you know, and institutions have been white women.
Wow.
So, like,
Man,
not saying that they don't.
It's just basically, that's white feminism right there. Like,
Yeah, so like not to say that white women do not deserve opportunities. That's not what I'm saying at all.
no,
What
but
I'm
like
saying
of
is
all,
that the idea, so the idea is because a lot of people speak about affirmative action, like, well, of course that brown kid got to Harvard. That's affirmative action at work. Like a deserving student didn't get in because they had to let this other one in. And like, no, they probably had the same exact scores. Like maybe like one person's essay or interview was better. You can't just say, you know, that it was affirmative action.
just like the complete like refusal to acknowledge that people of different races, ethnicities, genders, sexual orientations, like that they have merit on their own and are capable and smart and
Well, don't we see this in the
achieving
Wizarding
human beings.
World though? Like, you know, Hermione is the most capable witch of all the witches and wizards that we encounter of her age group.
Mm-hmm.
And yet she gets reduced to being called a mudblood at least once a book.
At least once, yeah, for sure.
So how is that, you know, like, so in the wizarding world, her legacy is that, you know, because her parents are not purebloods, her perceived ability is not, you know, is not equal to her actual ability in a lot of circles
Mm-hmm.
because of who her parents are or aren't.
Yeah, and every time anybody kind of like encounters her and sees her in action, they're always so surprised about how capable and smart she actually is.
Yeah, and I love how how that intersects with experiences that I have had in my personal life, and by love I mean I fucking hate. To where someone so long story short, I've had like an okay career because I have worked extremely hard and continue to work extremely hard. And I never stop learning, right? So anytime, you know, I talk to any of, I don't know, people who've known me in several different parts of my life, or just meet me, they're like, wow, like you got so lucky. I'm like, no, I didn't get lucky. I am very competent and like I'm amazing at this. What are you talking about? Like, do you not know how many hours I put into this and continue to put into this, into my career? Come on, dudes. So because there's like that idea that, you know, there's a lot of mediocre people at the top or anywhere in any organization, and mediocre people tend to believe that everyone's just as mediocre as they are.
Yeah, and I kind of seem to have like a different problem as far as like my success, because I tend to get like a really, really bad case of imposter syndrome anytime anything good happens to me.
I mean,
like,
I get that too, but like as soon as someone questions me, I'm like, no, I am capable.
well, see, like that, yeah. So, like, I mean, that's a better way to handle it or think about it. But like when like if I get a promotion or if I get a really good raise, or you know, like my boss at work shows me in some way that he has a lot of faith in me and like trusts me a lot, I get this just like this horrible intense case of imposter syndrome where I'm like, I did nothing to deserve this. What's going on? Like, I don't know why I'm
Helene, this
getting
is
this.
where you text me. You know, you're my career
No,
coach. Let me be yours.
but like this is my point. Like, I think that the reason that I automatically go to that is because like that's how everybody else perceives it. They're like, oh, she did nothing to deserve this, or at least like my thoughts are influenced by if not what other people are thinking and saying, what I think other people are thinking and saying,
Oh,
right? Like,
yes, I hear you 100%.
so like, I immediately think that I didn't deserve it because I'm sure that's what other people are probably also thinking. And it's probably, I mean, it's self-conscious. Like, I don't think that, and I immediately think like, oh, well, no one else will believe that I actually worked hard to get here. So it's hard for me to believe. It's just that like it happens. And I'm like, oh, you know what? It's probably influenced by what everybody else would be thinking too. Because
Well,
I mean,
I wonder if that specific instance has to do with being raised. I mean, I can tell you that for me, it had a lot to do with untangling myself from the idea that what everyone else thought of me was the truth. Because as Esmeralda Santiago, a Puerto Rican memoirist, speaks so well. Like Puerto Rico, like she was raised with el que dirán, which is what will people say about you, right? And like everything in my household revolved around, but what will people say if you do this or if you make this decision or this choice? So
yeah.
it was a very like race, like I was raised, you know, in a lot of Puerto Rican households. This is also true that people are raised very aware that your public perception or your brand with, you know, in the days of there was no social media, I was still aware that I was a brand. That what people perceived or what people said about me or my, you know, or what people, something I did would affect my family's reputation. And if the reputation was sullied, then then that is the worst thing that can happen. So I just wonder if that also has a little bit to do with that, like in the way of legacy.
Yeah. I mean, like, and if you think about it, legacy and reputation are kind of synonyms.
Oh yeah, completely.
So
So your reputation is what you know, outwardly present to the world. And so, you know,
and your
what the world
legacy is
thinks
just what,
of you.
yeah, your legacy is what is remembered about your reputation. Like what sticks.
Or, you know,
Basically.
what was your contribution or rather terrible thing that you did that made an impact in the world.
Exactly.
And if you didn't make an impact in the world, then what were you doing, right? So like we don't remember Hitler as like a failed artist, right? We remember Hitler as like a genocidal maniac with like terrible ideas.
Yep, that's his legacy. That's the impact he made on the world. Exactly. Yeah.
But he was both of those things, but he's not remembered as both of those things widely.
Exactly. Yeah. And when I think of legacy, a big thing I think of is Hamilton, the music.
I mean, of course.
Because, I mean, like, there are people out there who really, really care about their legacy and, like, what they're going to leave behind when they're no longer on this earth. And then there are people who, like, so, like, I feel like people like Hamilton, or at least, like, you know, what I've learned from the musical. I don't know about
the history I have learned through a musical.
People like him do good in the world or just, like, do something in their life just so that they can make an impact and be remembered for it later. And then there are the people who do good in the world with like completely altruistic means. Like they don't do it for any payout or any recognition later. So there are the people who care about their legacy and the people who don't care about their legacy. And I think there are good and bad people on both sides. Like bad people do bad things because, you know, like they don't have like like they're not thinking about their legacy, but they just like think that it's like what the right thing to do when they're doing it. And then there are the bad people who are like, I need to change the world and I'm going to do it in this way. And that's what they're remembered for. So.
Oof. And then there are bad people who are angry at the world. So they just want to watch it burn, you know?
Yeah. Those are the chaotic evils.
Yes. Those are the Donald Trumps of the world.
I hate him.
Oh, me too, girl. Me too. So we've talked a little bit about how we see legacy in the series. I mean, Harry is known as the boy who lived.
Mm-hmm.
Sirius Black has definitely a family legacy and history. What are other ways that you think we see this in the series?
A lot. So when you were telling me about like your experience personally,
Mm-hmm.
I like immediately drew a direct connection to Harry. As far as like him being who he is with the parents that he is always directly compared to his father, most likely. I mean, his mother a little bit, but like his father, like he is his father's legacy, and we see it both positively and negatively. We see it with Snape, where it's a bad thing that he's just like his father, and we see it with Sirius, where it's a good thing that he's just like his father. And
Yeah, and like
so
it just
people like being
how he's
judged
treated depends on how they felt about his parents.
about his father. Exactly. So like if that's not a very huge indication of legacy in the series, I don't know what is, because I mean everything that happens to not everything, but the way he's treated by a majority of people, especially at Hogwarts, has to do with how they felt about his parents.
Well, do you know who else is preoccupied by his legacy?
Mr. Dumbledore.
One Tom Riddle.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Dumbledore, because
But also
both
yes.
are true. Both are very true.
But also yes.
Yes, no, Tom Riddle for sure. He's one of those people that like he cares about leaving a legacy. Like he wants to,
and he,
well, he
and
doesn't.
wants
He doesn't ever want to die. He doesn't want to die, but he wants. But he like after he's gone, he wants people to know who he was.
Well, because he felt inadequate his entire life, and then also he wanted to erase the legacy of his Muggle-born father, of his Muggle father.
Exactly. Yeah, he wanted to change people's perception of who he is, who he like grew up, like who he was born as. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I mean, not to hammer the point too much, but like with the Hitler comparison, right? Like, just kind of like, this is the dangerous part of the arts, when you have someone who is like a frustrated artist and like they're just like, well, now I'm just going to become a genocidal maniac. Kind of, and I kind of jest, but I not really. In the way of it could be anyone who does these terrible things, and it also could be anyone who does amazing things in the world.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
All right. And then when you were talking about Dumbledore, though, we also see legacy in the series when everyone's like questioning like his motives after he dies, and like what happens after a beloved figure dies.
Yeah, and I see Dumbledore I see as one of the people who didn't try to leave a legacy, but he inadvertently did, just by like his actions and the type of person that he was. Like he didn't live his life saying, "I'm going to do all this stuff so people remember me." I think he truly wanted.
I think there was a point though where he wanted that, but then he abandoned it.
In his youth, totally, when he was looking for power. But the Dumbledore that we know, at least in the Harry Potter series, he left this world with a big legacy of like people remember him very fondly, especially Harry. And you're right, like all of that is questioned right after his death, when Rita Skeeter, starts to
untangle, I guess.
Uncover all these things that people unearth. That's the word I was trying to think. She like unearths all these things that like were kind of secret about his past, about his relationships before he became the Dumbledore that we knew.
But she also saw a loose thread in his like tapestry of legacy, or whatever we want to call it, and she just pulled until she could like completely unravel a part of it through like gossip and speculation.
Yeah, and that kind of shows how like the fragility of legacies, both during life and after death.
Well, do you think it also has legacy has a lot to do with like not just what you have done, but also who you leave behind to defend you? Because I mean, he didn't have any children who can like stand up for him. His brother wasn't like his staunchest defender. So, you know, because legacy is so tied with blood a lot of the times, it's not like, you know, like he was like easy pickings.
Yes, but at the same time, yes, he didn't have any blood, but he definitely had people who deeply cared about him. So
I'm thinking about someone like Meghan McCain, who is constantly defending her father's legacy.
True.
Yeah,
Although,
I don't know. I'm thinking out loud.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think John McCain has left enough of a legacy that he doesn't need his daughter doesn't need to be there to be defending it. And I think that the same thing is true with Dumbledore. Like his actions and what he contributed to the wizarding world they're unchangeable. They're very impactful. They're very large, and no matter what anybody says about him, like you can't change what he did.
What you're saying is that you can't change impact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so in this chapter, necessarily,
I just gotta say, I never expected to compare John McCain and Albus Dumbledore, but there we are.
Here we are. Politics. We go high, we go low, and we go left and right, and everywhere in between.
Anyway, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, we get off topic very easily.
Share with us. It's worth it.
Yeah, so in the chapter we see legacy a lot, you know, with the tapestry and, you know, that talk about families, you know, and specifically the Blacks. Is there anything else that, you know, kind of speaks about legacy before we get into our deep dive quotes?
Not specifically in this chapter. I think most of it is the talk of specifically about Sirius and his family and the legacy that his family has left behind and whether or not he feels he meshes with that and whether or not he agrees with it.
Well, I think it's time for us to go to our deep dive quotes about legacy in this chapter. So what's your deep dive quote, Helene?
So mine is a quote from Sirius, and it's in response to Harry pointing out that Bellatrix Lestrange is his cousin, and he never realized that Bellatrix was his cousin. And so he goes, "Does it matter if she's my cousin?" snapped Sirius. "As far as I'm concerned, they're not my family. She's certainly not my family. I haven't seen her since I was your age, unless you count a glimpse of her coming into Azkaban. Do you think I'm proud of having relatives like her?"
Whew.
Yeah, so it's basically illustrating the fact that Sirius vehemently rejects the legacy of his family. Mm-hmm. He sees the legacy. He knows the reputation of the Blacks. He knows the legacy that they have left behind. That the associations that come with all of his relatives, including Bellatrix Lestrange, and he just rejects it so strongly and wants to distance himself from that legacy so much. And that this quote really just illustrates that.
Yeah, he doesn't want a lot to do with it, and I think it has also a lot to do with the fact that he's like, I don't want Harry to see me in a different light after this either.
Yeah, exactly. And how he has to live with the impact of like who his family is and how that reflects on him, and he has to deal with that every day.
It's okay, Sirius. We all do. We all do. He's very relatable in this chapter. Yep. Hi, Mom. I love you. So my quote is related to that one, actually. I think it comes before that. It says, this is, okay, so they're looking at the tapestry, and I'm going to set the scene. They're looking at the tapestry, and Harry notices there's like this line from the Blacks that goes into like Lucius Malfoy like marries into the family, and he goes, "You're related to the Malfoys. the pure-blooded families are all interrelated, said Sirius. If you're only going to let your sons and daughters marry purebloods, your choice is very limited. There are hardly any of us left. Molly and I are cousins by marriage, and Arthur's something like my second cousin once removed. But there's no point of looking for them on here. If ever was a family which a bunch of blood traitors, it's the Weasleys.
Yeah. Yeah. I almost picked something around that too.
Well, but it just gets to me. The point is that showing legacy in the wizarding world, especially as it becomes about pureblood families, is showing that the more you try to enter a very rarefied circle and like a very exclusive club, right? Like once you try to put so many barriers, your options only dwindle because of, I don't know, statistics.
Yep.
And especially if you're going to start like saying, well, if you marry so-and-so, then you're banned from like being in this rarefied circle. And then you're like, well, your numbers are already depleting because of intermarriage, and you want to do what?
Right.
So it's like,
it's really gross to think about.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's no point in denying that, like, that is classist and gross and all the other things.
Oh, yeah.
I just have to wonder if this is a commentary on the way that actual British nobility system works, in the way that titled folks kind of all know each other and they're all kind of related in some way or another. And it's kind of a hard circle to penetrate from the outside as a commoner, and how like whenever it's a commoner marrying into like titled, or moneyed families, or families that have a certain kind of legacy, like there's always like ideas of like gold digger or whatever. And recently people have had to kind of, have had to kind of expand what it, means to be acceptable in that crowd, so that they're not just like marrying each other's cousins all the time.
Yeah. I don't know enough about like British nobility or anything like that to really
I would start with celibitchy.com. It has a lot of celebrity gossip and also that.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been one of those people that's been like interested in like the royal family or anything like that, or like anything remotely close to it. So I don't know too much about it, but I'm sure that, I mean, this is a British story. So I'm sure that J.K. Rowling drew inspiration from those types of families for the purebloods for sure.
Well, I think we can also see it in like the social sets that we have in different even cities or towns in even America, where certain people's families who have influence will only marry like the other influential people or people of influence, because consolidation of power is more important than anything else to certain people.
Yeah, it's fucked up. I mean,
understatement.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, I have no other commentary on that other than like people need to just stop looking at people in terms of like very superficial things and start looking at the human beings that they are, because like this is ridiculous.
Well, speaking of human beings, who's the character that for you exemplifies this politic in this one chapter?
I think we both are going to say the same person, because
Mr. Sirius Black.
Yeah. I mean, really, who else is there? Because really the entire chapter, I mean, like not the entire chapter, but part of the chapter that's about legacy specifically is just Harry and Sirius talking about people that aren't there.
I mean, actually, we could even talk about Creature in a way, too, because Creature is also very preoccupied with his, like, mistress's house being, like, filled with these people that she would never admit.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think for him, it's definitely legacy is an issue as far as, like, he feels that Sirius is tarnishing the legacy by allowing these people into the house.
Or that Sirius's mom's legacy is not living on by these people being there.
Yeah, I think Sirius is more obsessed with just like or I think Creature is more obsessed with Sirius. Cannot remember if I keep on saying Sirius instead of Creature or Creature instead of Sirius. Anyway,
You're fine.
I think Creature is more so obsessed with Sirius's mom and like her alone, and I don't think he really cares about the entire legacy of the family. I think he just cares about her and her memory.
But isn't a memory a kind of legacy, or am I misunderstanding? Like,
no, it is. Yes, I think her a memory and a legacy are very similar. In my mind, at least.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like I feel like a legacy is bigger than just one person sometimes. Especially when it comes to when it comes to the Black family. I feel like the legacy of the Black family is bigger than just Sirius's mom.
Well, and the actual title of the chapter is also about like legacy, right? So it's like the most noble and ancient house of Black or whatever. And I'm just like, that's a mouthful, y'all. Like,
yep. Yes, it is.
Maybe I should start like saying like the most noble and ancient house of Wilson.
Oh yes. Hell yes. The most noble and ancient house of Carp.
You know what? It's happening. All right, we're done. Okay, we're done with talking about this chapter. What a ride. Helene, as you know, we usually end up every episode of this political podcast with the media we've been consuming and, kind of like recommending to our listeners.
Yeah. So, the one that I picked this week, I actually just started it last night and like binged the first like 5 or 6 episodes before I went to bed. Mm-hmm. It's a show on Netflix called Love is Blind. And it's technically like, I guess the way that I would describe it is kind of like a reality dating series, kind of like The Bachelor, but not really. What it really is it's an experiment, like a televised experiment, basically, where Nick Lachey and his wife, which, I mean, super random, came up with this idea to take a bunch of strangers and put them and like introduce them and have them build relationships without ever having seen each other. And so they put them in these pods with like a wall in between them. And they go on dates, basically, in these pods where they can't see each other, but all they can do is talk. And they have no idea what the other person looks like. They don't know what race they are. They don't know like anything about their physical appearance other than like what they choose to tell each other, which a lot of the times they don't choose to tell each other like what their like races are and stuff like that. And then these people make this emotional connection with each other before ever having seen each other, to the point where like they usually, like, at least I don't know if this is a rule for the show or if these people just like decided to do this, but a lot of them like got engaged within like a week of.
Well, they have to get engaged to go to the next round.
Yes, exactly. So like they would propose to these people that they'd never seen before, and then they wouldn't actually get to see each other until after they propose. And after they get engaged, and then they, whisk them off to Mexico, and they get to explore their physical relationship, just the two of them with no distractions. And then eventually, I haven't gotten to this part yet, they will, start introducing each other into each other's lives and meet each other's families and like move in together. And then it ends with their weddings. So it's really interesting because, there are a few like interracial couples on the show that like they admit that they aren't sure that they would have dated this person if they had seen them up front. But getting to know them on like a very personal, emotional level before ever having seen them allow them to make these connections that they wouldn't have made otherwise. They don't in like the real world. So it's really interesting.
As you can tell, I have also been watching it.
Yes. Isn't it? It's so good.
And I was thinking, we need to talk about this offline.
Yeah, I love it. I'm obsessed.
I definitely have my favorite couples. And I won't spoil it for anyone.
I want to know who they are.
And also I have like the person I love to hate the most, who is a man, obviously. Because why not?
Of course.
I mean, who else is more hateable than a man on these shows? But yeah, I also have watched about 5 episodes, I think. But I've also been listening.
I think that's all that was released until last night, but they release new episodes every Thursday. So today they added like 5 more episodes or something.
Well, I guess I have homework.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch it. Like once we stop recording, I'm gonna watch it.
We might be texting back and forth.
Oh, good.
So the media I've been consuming on top of Love is Blind is the Unladylike podcast, which features an interview with a woman who does something that is considered unladylike and, kind of smashes the patriarchy that way. I love it.
Nice. That sounds like an interesting podcast.
You know how I am. I'm into like, smashing the patriarchy.
Totally. It's the best.
That's it for today's episode. Join us in 2 weeks so that we can talk about Chapter 7 of Order of the Phoenix, Politic, TBD. We are flying by the seats of our pants or skirts or whatever we're wearing. In my case, it's leggings. But until then, politics managed.